John McMurdo,
said the voice.
Are you already a member of the ancient order of freemen?
He bowed in assent.
Is your lodge number 29 Chicago?
He bowed again.
Dark nights are unpleasant,
said the voice.
Yes, for strangers to travel.
He answered.
The clouds are heavy.
Yes, a storm is approaching.
Are the brethren satisfied?
Asked the bodymaster. There was a general murmur of assent.
We know, brother, by your sign and by your countersign, that you are indeed one of us. We would have you know, however, that in this country and in other countries of these parts, we have certain rights and also certain duties of our own which call for good men. Are you ready to be tested?
Good evening, and welcome to tonight's presentation, From the Quarries, an archive of Masonic lore.
In Beeton's Christmas Annual of 1887, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle presented to the public a study in Scarlet, his first Sherlock Holmes story. From this beginning, there followed 56 short stories and 3 novels with Sherlock Holmes and his Boswell, John H. Watson, M.D., as the principal characters. From the canon, as the short stories and novels are referred to by Sherlockians, there have emerged writings upon every topic imaginable, including references to Freemasonry. Arthur Charles Ignatius Conan Doyle was born on the 22nd of May 1859 at Picardy Place, Edinburgh, the son of Charles Doyle and Mary Foley. He was the first in a family which included 3 sisters and a brother. The father, Charles Doyle, was a civil servant and an artist who was unworldly and impracticable, and his family suffered because of it. His mother was the guiding force in the family and in Conan Doyle's life. Of his boyhood, Conan Doyle recalls that it was Spartan. At the age of 10, he was sent to Hodder, where the boys were prepared for entry to Stonyhurst, a prominent public school in Lancashire. When he was ready to pursue his higher education, it was decided that he should enter medical school at Edinburgh University. He entered in 1876 and graduated with the degree of Bachelor of Medicine in 1881. As part of his medical studies, he spent 7 months as a surgeon on the whaling ship Hope in the Arctic in 1880. After taking his medical degree, Doyle sailed to South Africa for 4 months as the ship's doctor aboard the Mayumba. Conan Doyle married Louise Hawkins in 1885. From that union were born 2 children. His wife, whom he called Tui, died of tuberculosis in 1906 after a 13-year illness, and despite recuperative treatment at several locations. In 1907, he married Jean Leckie, and there were 3 children in that marriage. Conan Doyle is reported to have been able to write his stories in a variety of situations and circumstances. For example, while riding on a train or in a room full of people, and his handwritten manuscripts indicate they required very little revision. Although he is best known for the Holmes canon, Conan Doyle considered himself to be an historical novelist, and that is where his primary interest lay. Among many such works from his pen were Micah Clarke, The Firm of Girdleston, The White Company, and The Refugees. He also wrote many short stories, including those about Brigadier Gerard and Sir Nigel, and others on themes of mystery and terror. There is a further collection entitled Round the Red Lamp, which relates to his medical practice, and the Stark Munro Letters, which are autobiographical in character. but his real autobiography was Memories and Adventures. He was quite irritated that his detective stories received more attention than his other work. In 1923 he wrote, "I believe that if I had never touched Holmes, who tended to obscure my higher work, my position in literature would, at the present moment, be a more commanding one." Indeed, Conan Doyle became so disenchanted with Sherlock Holmes that in The Final Problem, written in 1893, Holmes was killed in a fall over the Reichenbach Falls in Switzerland, while in deadly combat with Professor Moriarty, the Napoleon of crime and his arch-enemy. Holmes' death dismayed readers so much that letters of complaint poured in. In one, a lady addressed the author as "you brute," and even his mother begged him not to kill Holmes. Some men wore black armbands in mourning. In 1903, Holmes was restored to life in The Adventure of the Empty House. From August 1901 until April 1902, The Hound of the Baskervilles appeared in serial form in the Strand magazine. But Conan Doyle remained adamant that Holmes was dead, and this was a previously unchronicled case. He was also a prolific writer on various topics of current interest, and wrote innumerable letters to the press. He was responsible for introducing downhill skiing into Switzerland, the introduction of metal helmets for combat soldiers, and the inflatable life preserver for sailors. He was also an energetic champion of divorce reform, and was one of the first proponents of a tunnel connecting England and France. Although he was too old for active service in World War I, he was actively engaged in the war effort on the home front, and wrote and spoke about the hostilities. Arthur Conan Doyle was initiated on the 26th of January 1887 at the age of 27, passed on the 23rd of February 1887, and raised on the 23rd of March 1887 in Phoenix Lodge, number 257, Southsea, Hampshire. He resigned in 1889 and rejoined in 1902, but finally withdrew in 1911 without having made further progress in the craft. The records of the United Grand Lodge of England contain no indication of his having affiliated with any other lodge. The October 1901 edition of Masonic Illustrated, page 29, indicates that Conan Doyle attended a lodge at Bloemfontein with Rudyard Kipling during the Boer War. Upon his return home the same year, he was made an honorary member of the Lodge of Edinburgh, Mary's Chapel No. 1, in Edinburgh. This membership was conferred upon him when he accepted an invitation to speak at a Burns night dinner. In this speech, he confirmed many reports which had been received of the value of Freemasonry on the battlefield. Prisoners on both sides, when found to be Freemasons, were invariably treated with more courtesy and consideration than would otherwise have been the case. The name Sherlock Holmes conjures up images of Victorian England, swirling fog, and a tall, thin detective with a deerstalker hat, magnifying glass, and a pipe with a curved stem. For Sherlockians he lives, and their writings have produced voluminous comments upon the man. Vincent Starrett, a leading Sherlockian in The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes, observed that the existence of Sherlock Holmes is, however, something more than a matter of mere faith. That he emerged from the pages of a book may be a concern for scholarly regard, but it can hardly be denied that he has taken his place in the living world. It is reported that the French General Humbert, famous in World War I, asked of Conan Doyle,
Sherlock Holmes, est-ce qu'il est un soldat dans l'armée anglaise?
Is Sherlock Holmes a soldier in the English army? There was an embarrassing moment, and then Doyle replied,
Mais mon général, il est trop vieux pour le service.
But, General, he is too old for active service. We will use two examples of references to Freemasonry in Conan Doyle's work. The Adventure of the Musgrave Ritual, first published in the Strand Magazine, 1893. Reginald Musgrave, an acquaintance of Holmes, asked him to apply those powers with which he used to amaze us to something strange and inexplicable in his ancestral home in Sussex. The butler, who had been given notice of his dismissal for prying into family affairs, had disappeared without a trace, and Holmes was retained to find him. During the investigation, Holmes took possession of a ritual which had been in the Musgrave family for generations. He used it to locate both the missing butler and an ancient crown of King Charles I of England. The document, which Holmes took into his possession, was described by its owner as the strange catechism to which each Musgrave had to submit when he came to man's estate. He read out the questions and answers. Whose was it? His who is gone. Who shall have it? He who will come. Where was the sun? Over the oak. Where was the shadow? Under the elm. How was it stepped? North by 10 and by 10, east by 5 and by 5, south by 2 and by 2, west by 1 and by 1, and so under. What shall we give for it? All that is ours. Why should we give it? For the sake of the trust. Professor J. Macpherson of the University of Toronto is of the opinion that this catechism had its origins in Freemasonry. Barrett G. Potter, in his Sherlock Holmes and the Masonic Connection, also believes that the ritual had its roots in Masonic catechisms used for the instruction of the brethren. The Valley of Fear, first published in the Strand Magazine, 1914. This full-length novel was written by Conan Doyle 3 years after he resigned his membership of Phoenix Lodge. In it, Holmes was called in to investigate the death of John Douglas and his wife at Burleston Manor, Sussex. Among the clues were a card with the symbol VV341 scrawled upon it, and a brand mark on the deceased's arm. The VV341 referred to the ancient order of freemen, the Scourers of Vermissa, Lodge number 341. In the course of the story, lodge proceedings are discussed, and the following ensues with reference to Bertie Edwards, alias John McCurdo.
John McMurdo,
said the voice.
Are you already a member of the ancient order of freemen?
He bowed in assent.
Is your lodge number 29 Chicago?
He bowed again.
Dark nights are unpleasant,
said the voice.
Yes, for strangers to travel.
He answered.
The clouds are heavy.
Yes, a storm is approaching.
Are the brethren satisfied?
Asked the bodymaster. There was a general murmur of assent.
We know, brother, by your sign and by your countersign that you are indeed one of us. We would have you know, however, that in this country and in other countries of these parts we have certain rights and also certain duties of our own which call for good men. Are you ready to be tested?
This is a catechism somewhat similar to that in the Musgrave Ritual. Other stories with Masonic references are A Study in Scarlet, A Scandal in Bohemia, The Adventures of the Red-Headed League, The Stockbroker's Clerk, The Adventure of the Yellow Face, The Adventure of the Norwood Builder, and The Adventure of the Retired Colourman. Conan Doyle died on the 7th of July 1930 at Crowborough in Sussex, and was buried in the gardens of the family home in Windlesham in Surrey. The headstone was a British oak, and is inscribed only with his name, his date of birth, and the 4 words, "Steel true, blade straight." 18 years earlier, without realizing it, he had written his own epitaph. "I have wrought my simple plan if I give 1 hour of joy to the boy who's half a man, or to the man who's half a boy." For a deep dive into the history, philosophy, and traditions of Freemasonry, subscribe to From the Quarries. You will find hundreds of lectures, presentations, shorts, and other Masonic works written by Freemasons for Freemasons. Visit FromTheQuarries.com or YouTube at From the Quarries.